Insect wings. Do all insects have wings? When did insects first get wings? How did insect wings evolve? Let's find some answers. Insects first took to the air some 350 to 400 million years ago. Insects were the first organisms to fly, well before birds existed. But like most evolutionary developments, this didn't happen overnight. It's thought that insect flight developed in response to predator pressure. In other words, something wants to eat me, I need to get away as fast and as far as possible. It might have started as a controlled leap, progressed through gliding, and later to muscle-powered flight. This progression would have taken millions of years. But before you go leaping, gliding or flying, you need wings. Where did wings come from? How did they evolve? What did they evolve from? That's a question that is not entirely settled. It used to be thought that insect wings evolved from the gills of aquatic insect larvae, but that theory has pretty much been cast aside now. What researchers can agree on is that insect wings most likely are derived from ancestral leg segments. Insects are the only invertebrates that can fly, but if you want to see what a scorpion might have looked like with wings, check out my video on scorpion flies and hanging flies. I've linked it up here in the cards and also down in the description. Flight gave insects considerable advantages over all the other invertebrates. Not only did it allow insects to escape from predators more easily, but also allowed insects to move great distances to colonise new habitats. Put simply, the ability to fly is the most important evolutionary step for insects. And flight is one of the reasons that insects are so dominant in most terrestrial ecosystems. In a future video, we'll look at the mechanics of insect flight. But if you like this video so far, why don't you give it a thumbs up? There are some insects that don't have and never have had wings. And this includes silverfish and some related insects. And I reckon silverfish should make a good topic at some stage. All other insects are classified as pterygota. But confusingly, this includes some insects that are now wingless. The distinction here is that their ancestors had wings. Why some insects have lost their wings has been debated for many years. Wingless insects are quite prevalent on islands, particularly subantarctic islands where most of the insects are wingless. Charles Darwin had a theory that it was due to the windiness of the islands, because they are located in latitudes known as the Roaring Forties and the Furious 50s. Yeah, really, really windy. Darwin theorised that insects trying to fly in such conditions are likely to be blown out to sea. So winglessness evolved in the island's insects to avoid that. A recent paper suggests that Darwin was partly right. Yep, it's about windiness, but it's not about being blown out to sea. It's more that trying to fly in such conditions uses a lot of energy. Winglessness saves that energy, which can then be redirected into important functions like reproduction. But let's look at something a little bit different. A couple of families of wasps where the females are wingless but the males have wings. Why is it that only the females are wingless? How come the males get to have wings? Once again, the theory has to do with energy. It takes more energy to produce eggs and less energy to produce sperm. So in other words, the males can kind of afford to have wings and the females save their energy for egg production. So what happens if a female actually needs a male to mate with? Well, she calls him in by releasing some pheromones. So let's look at the flower wasps of the family Aphids. And as I've said, the female calls the male in. And when he arrives, not only does he couple with her to mate, but he carries her to flowers so she can feed on nectar, which is kind of why they're called flower wasps. And I've actually witnessed this. I watched a wingless female dig a little bowl-shaped depression in the sand, raise her abdomen, to release pheromones and call in a male. Within a minute or two, the male arrived, paired up with her and flew off with her. And guess who didn't have a camera? Guilty. Let's look at wasps of the family Mutilidae. Now these are known as velvet ants, even though they're not ants, but females are wingless and they call in males in a similar manner by raising their abdomen, and the male flies in and they mate. So you might see the females running around on the ground like that with their abdomen raised in the air. But it begs the question, if wings were developed as a means to get away from predators, how do these wingless females defend themselves against predators? In a word, venom. They both have very powerful stings, don't pick them up. In fact, female velvet ants are known as cow killers in the US. I mean, of course, they don't actually kill cows, but the notion that they might probably makes you wear shoes when you go outdoors. Now, aphids are an interesting group because they can be winged or wingless, depending on the conditions. Wingless adults are the norm when the colony is not overcrowded. Winged adults can develop if, for example, plants start to dry off, or they need to move from an overwintering site, or if the colony becomes overcrowded. And sometimes you can have winged and wingless adults in an aphid colony. The ability to fly allows some insects to migrate seasonally to avoid unfavourable conditions. The most famous of these is the monarch butterfly migration of North America. The eastern population migrates from as far north as Canada down to Mexico, where they hibernate for the winter. But the monarch butterfly migration is not the longest insect migration in the world. That honour goes to the painted lady butterfly, which migrates from Europe to sub-Saharan Africa and back, a round trip of about 15,000 kilometres. The round trip of a monarch is about 9,000 kilometres. Australia also has migratory insects. The most well-known of these is the summer migration of the bogong moth from hot inland areas to the cool mountains of the Victorian and New South Wales high country. That'll make a great topic for a future video. Insects first took to the skies hundreds of millions of years ago, and some of those early insects were huge. If you want to see what they looked like, check out this video up here, and thanks for watching.